This week, I'm going to get a little bit inside baseball with regard to the writing process. Now, I know maybe not all people are interested in this, but people always ask me about how we go about our jobs. So I figured in this one instance, why not? We'll talk a little bit about it. Now, I mentioned that Mets column I wrote last Thursday night. That was pretty short. It was about 600 words. And some people reached out to me afterward and said, "We'd like a deeper analysis, Ken." 600 words. I mean, this was just superficial. Okay, that day I had finished a much deeper story on Bruce Bochy that's about 3,300 words. It's running Monday morning. It's out there right now. And it's a long look at what makes Bochy such a good manager. So I'm going to take you through the process of how I came to write that story and how I went about it. And it starts with the idea that we needed at The Athletic a good Rangers story, a deeper Rangers story. Our beat writer, Levi Weaver, who had been covering the Rangers, is now writing the free daily newsletter that I sometimes refer to. We don't currently have a Rangers beat writer. So I'm looking at the team and I'm thinking, okay, I'm a national writer. I cover all the teams. How do I go about this? What's the most interesting thing about the team? I settled on Bochy. Now, I could have chosen a dozen different topics. There are a lot of interesting things going on with the Rangers. But Bochy, to me, three-time World Series champion, fans know who he is. It would be a really cool thing to do. So about a week and a half ago, I started making phone calls. Now, you always prefer to do interviews in person. It's just a much better thing. You can read body language. It's a conversation rather than on the phone or Zoom or anything else. But I haven't been around the Rangers lately, and I don't think I will be around them anytime soon either, based on my Fox schedule. So I just started making calls, and I have a lot of numbers of people in the game. And with the people I didn't have, some players in particular, I needed help from agents, and agents connected me with the players. I can do this because I've been doing this job a long time. People generally know who I am. So if I ask on a subject that is non-controversial, people are not going to give me a problem. They're going to generally try to help. If it was a controversial topic and I'm asking agents to get me in touch with players, it would be shutdown mode. But it wasn't the case. Bruce Bochy, everyone wants to talk about him. So I thought this would be a good topic to explore, as I said, and I started making these phone calls. And ultimately, I decided to write it, and I came up with an outline. Now, I always outline these longer stories because I'm not, in my view, the most natural of writers. In my head, I've never asked Tom Verducci about this, but I feel that this is probably the case. It seems to me like Tom could sit down and start writing, and 5,000 words would just flow out of his fingers. Maybe that's not true. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not true. Tom would tell me that, but it seems that way to me. So when I do a story like this, I generally transcribe all my interviews, and then I outline them. And I make an outline like this. I'm not going to put it any closer to the camera. You'll never be able to read what I'm saying. But I divide the stories into sections, and I kind of just put it together that way. It allows me to organize my thoughts and just kind of follow, not a formula, because this is not formulaic what you're doing, but a process, an organized outline and process. So then I wrote it. It takes me, on a story like that, usually more than a day. It drifted into a second day. And I got it done last Thursday, the night the Mets blew the lead in Atlanta for the third straight day. And we ran it today. Now, why the lag? Well, a couple of things. We wanted to schedule it on a Monday in this particular case. We thought the story would be of interest to a lot of people. And stories like this require a little bit more editing than your average story. And The Athletic has one of the great editors that I've worked with. Actually, the best word editor I've worked with. Her name is Emma Spann. And she can see things in stories that, frankly, are incredible. She sees the flaws. In fact, if I think I've got maybe a problem area in the story, she always goes right to it. It's like she's reading my mind. And she generally has some really good suggestions. Had some on this story as well. We had to clean some things up. We had to maybe tighten some things. And that's the process of how we got to publishing this story today. So with a story like this, the thing I like most about it is that I learned things along the way that I didn't know. And obviously, that's a good thing if it happens because it enables me to share things with readers that maybe they didn't know. Sometimes the readers are smarter than me and they know more than me. I get it. Yes, that's true. That happens. But in the case of Bochy, I learned a whole lot. One was how his mind works and how quickly he processes things, even at a relatively advanced age, 68, even though he's done this forever, even though he had been out for 3 years. Remember, he had not managed since 2019 before taking the Rangers job last October. And yet, he still is right on everything. And in fact, this was something I thought was really cool. He doesn't take notes during games. Bruce Bochy just watches the game and he processes everything right there as it's happening in real time. He is ahead of every move. We know he runs a great bullpen. He will pick up things in the other dugout, maybe a guy stirring around who might be getting ready to pinch hit. In the other bullpen, relievers moving around. He'll see a first baseman playing off the line. He'll say, move him over. All of these things he's picking up, and he never takes a note, never keeps score. He also has adapted to this new era of baseball, the analytical era. And I spoke with the Rangers statistical analyst who works most closely with Bochy and the staff. His name is Bobby Bandolo. And he said that he thought coming in, Bochy would be resistant to what he has. He was very worried. Bobby Bandolo is a 30-year-old guy. He's working in this role for the first time this year with the team every day. And yet, Bochy from the first day of spring training was open to everything. Now, he doesn't always use everything. No manager does. But he's open. He wants to know all of the information. He told me, I don't want anybody having the edge on me. So that was something else I learned. And then the last thing, and actually there's a much more to this story than even what I'm telling you here. But the last thing that really stood out to me was his sense of humor. The players, the coaches consider Bochy to be a riot. And I've got a number of anecdotes in there toward the end of the story, just relating some of the things that he has said to players and coaches during the course of the season. He does that because that's his personality. And he does it, I think, to relax people too. And to kind of make sure that everybody is on the same page. He gave a great introductory talk at the start of spring training. This is in the story as well. That really fired up the players. John Gray said that he felt after Bochy's initial speech that he was part of something bigger than himself. And this is what Bochy does. He puts players and coaches at ease. He, of course, runs the game like no one else. He is respected because of that. And for all those reasons, I thought this would just be a really cool thing to write about. And it turned out that way, at least from my perspective. The readers will have their own say and their own opinions. But I encourage you to read it if you obviously are interested in baseball and the way a manager of his caliber works. It doesn't have to be a story that is appreciated just by Rangers fans or even Giants fans or even Padres fans, where Bochy was before going to Texas. It's just the story of a guy who's been a baseball lifer and who is back now with this team, second in the majors in winning percentage. They got beat 2-3 by the Rays this weekend. That's the best team in the majors, the Rays. But the Rangers are right there with them. They've had an amazing year, and the manager is a big part of it. They have essentially the same players. Granted, they bought an entirely new rotation. They brought in Evaldi, Heaney, and Jacob deGrom, who has barely contributed. But it's a lot of the same guys. Some of the younger ones have just matured, and some of the older ones, the veterans, Seager, Semien, they're settling in now. It's their second year. Remember, they were without Seager for a month. They were without Mitch Garver for a time, and here they are, just kicking butt in the American League West. So that's the story. Bruce Bochy. That's why I wrote it. That's how I went about writing it. Hope you enjoy it.